Check, check, check. Oh, there we go. Okay. We have audio now. So weird. I don't know why the audio switches in this. Hopefully, did you all have audio when the things were playing? Hopefully you did. The promos are playing. Uh Nice to see everybody. Hope you're doing good today. It is Tuesday, July 1st, barreling into the weekend holiday, of course, of July 4th. Audio is loud and clear. Good to know. Good to know. Um, let's see. Even Lease just had his account hacked yesterday. Yeah, mine's pretty secure. I mean, it's as secure as they let you make it. Multiple authentication and hopefully I'm good. Sorry to hear that about Even Lease. Um, Yeah, it always sucks when stuff gets hacked. So, um, half a year gone already. Yeah, it's crazy. Half a year gone already. It's really wild. So as many of you know, worked pretty heavily through April and May on the St. Jude stuff. Once that finished, I took some time in June to spend time with family, do some other stuff. So I've been a little bit kind of pulled away from Starjump stuff, but that's okay. We're just going to um, slowly start to be able to kind of get back to Starjump stuff here. As many of you know, I am going to be at Quantum Vegas 2955. So I've been doing a lot of prep for that too, including getting some swag set up. I wanted to get some posters created for that so that people that are going to the event could have some stuff to grab, while they're there. Oh, stand by. You know how I got to do it, people. I got to get some of that dog hair off me. All right. Hey, Enderfan. Hope you're well. Hope you're well. But yeah, so it's been a little bit of a down June because I've been dealing with a bunch of stuff. Alien Week doesn't typically interest me, so I didn't put a lot of attention into that. Obviously, we had the Prowler utility come out. We're now coming out. We're getting to the RSI Meteor, which is going to be coming in the next patch. So there are some new ship things happening. There's some stuff for us to discuss. But at the same time, June has just been a little bit of an off week for me, or off month for me. Excuse me, off month for me. But that is okay. Okay, wait a minute. I'm having a restream issue. Let's see. I got to test my restream real quick here. Hopefully you all get that. Okay, yeah, went through. Payne and Hate, good morning to you as well. So what are we talking about today? We're going to be talking about possible Mark II variants, what we would possibly like to see in some Mark II variants, why maybe a Mark II variant may be targeted for a ship, why they won't be. So we're going to go into that a little bit. I'm going to open the discussion up to you all in chat. If you have ideas for Mark IIs, I'll be really interested. What we're going to do is we're going to sort of build a Mark II wish list on Fleet Viewer. And then over some subsequent Shipyard episodes, we're going to kit bash those and we're going to create them. I know VMXEO's in chat, down in chat. He's done his own sort of ship variant Mark II kit bashing in the past. I need to find that one image, VM, of the X-Wing Aurora. I don't know if you can DM that to me. But anyways, we're going to go all into that. Real quick, though, I'm going to flip over. Do not forget, everyone. Valisoth just subscribed for 5 months in a row. Thank you very much, Valisoth. But for those of you that are going, and those of you that aren't going, definitely pay attention because they're only 10 days out now. Quantum Vegas 2955. Really excited about this event. Again, 10 days away now. It's going to be at Area 15 in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm going to be there in person. It's going to be really cool. I've got Starjump swag. Do I have any of the pieces? I'm going to have a lot of these little Starjump metal pens here that are unique to in-person events. I got a bunch of those to give away. I'm going to have stickers. Going to have possibly a few challenge coins. So I'm going to have stuff to give away. We've got a huge cast of characters going to be there. It's going to be amazing. DePoets, who's one of my favorite content creators, and Kim Ellis are both acting as sort of the main hosts of the show, so that'll be exciting. But we're going to have Sandy Roberts there, okay, co-founder of Cloud Imperium Games. How cool is that? We're also going to have Sean Tracy, Senior Director of Tools and Tech Content. Those of you that don't know, Sean Tracy is, obviously an OG through and through. He's been at Cloud Imperium for a long, long time, so it's going to be interesting to hear what he has to say. In addition, we have Galactica, the social media manager for CIG, as well as Tyler Zylo-Witkin, Director of Community at CIG as well. So that's our CIG group. Nate Ellis from EE Studios will be there, obviously, along with his wife, Kim. Starjump Grim, me, will be there. Just pretty excited. Paul Shelley, the Astro historian himself, will be there. I was supposed to be on Paul's show the other day, and I couldn't make it at a kid's birthday party to go to. So hopefully get back on one of Paul's shows again very soon. Serious Fun's going to be a moderator there, so he'll be on stage with some of us doing panels, sort of asking us questions and all that kind of stuff. Daniel Raymond, the Voice of Race guy, will be there. Great content creator, does great videos. Just did a really good video on the economy, by the way, CIG or the Star Citizen economy. I encourage everyone to go check it out. Just my lighting here. There we go. Griffin Gaming, obviously Griff, putting a ton of work into this. Everyone should be giving Griff a giant salute because he's been doing an incredible amount of work getting this event off the ground. Commander Fran, Global Coordinator for Beacon events. I've done some stuff with Beacon in the past. So I'm really excited to meet Commander Fran in person. Super nice guy. And then Nick at Night, who's Vice President of Bar Citizen International. Nick does a ton of work for Bar Citizen events. So we're in really good hands. The people putting this on know the drill. They know how to put on a good event. It's going to be a great time. It's still pretty kind of an intimate affair. I think there's 300 tickets they're selling total. I think they've sold through a good amount of those. There are some left. So it's still going to be kind of intimate, right? Mookin says, you doing anything fun while in Vegas, Graham? I'm flying there Friday. I'm going to go to the Bar Citizen event that Friday night. They're having at the bar right where the event's happening. Then Saturday all day from morning to night is the event, is Quantum. And then the next morning I'm flying immediately back home because I have to go on a family vacation. So it's going to be a really quick one for me, Mootkins. Probably not a lot of time to enjoy the 110-degree heat. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That's true. That's true. But again, great group of people. As I've said, there is a great program on the website here. Actually, let me go back. Let me grab the web address again for those of you that just last minute think you might be able to go. The panels are all listed right there. Again, going to be a lot of fun. All the panels are listed. There's going to be a machinima contest. There's going to be a ton of ships being given away by CIG. I forget the exact list, but I think it's like 20 ships or something like that. Again, all this stuff is there. The ticket prices are there. The general admission ticket is still available. There's still some general admission tickets still available. So try to jump on this quick if you're wanting to go. There is a Bar Citizen that night, Friday night from 6:30 to 11:30. I don't know if I'll be there for 6:30 start of it, but I'll be there a little bit later. But it's going to be great. That's being hosted there at Area 15, which is where the event is going to be. So, how much is the estimate cost to attend? Well, the ticket price is $125. I think I had to pay, I think if you're flying or getting a hotel room there, hotel room, if you need to stay a single night, for example, might be, I don't know, last time I checked in Vegas was about 200 to something like that. It wasn't much, 200, 220. And then the flight, it just depends on where you're coming from and how you want to fly. I ended up getting a flight for really cheap. So, you got to spend a little bit. But again, it's going to be a great event. So, that is Quantum Vegas. Again, obviously, there's an expense to going, so totally understand if you can't go. But if you are going, look me up when you get there because I'll be roaming around. I'll have some Starjump swag. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, yeah, Bar Citizen Friday is free. Correct. So if you're in the Vegas area, by all means, show up to the Bar Citizen event. Come say hi. Let's see, Richard Tyra. Is that the real Richard Tyra? Wish I could come out this year. Is that first time? It is. Richard, salute to you. Hope you are well. Hitting follow. It's nice to have you here. Richard, obviously we go over the Star Citizen 1.0 presentation you gave at CitizenCon all the time. As I've said many times on this stream, that presentation really reaffirmed all that I was hoping about the future of the game, the direction. I really love the 1.0 vision. I really, really do. And I have a lot of faith in it. So I love how all the interlocking gameplay loops were sort of envisioned and demonstrated. So thank you very much. Tyra just subscribed for 3 months in a row. Thank you very much. The Kraken has just went over my face. Best ship in the game, obviously. Not in the game yet, but the best ship concepted for the game. We already know it. But yes, no, thank you for hanging out with us. Really appreciate it. Yeah, Quantum Vegas, going to be a cool event. I'm really excited to meet Sean Tracy and Sandy Roberts. I obviously love the current Star Citizen video content, but I got to say, I do miss some of the old Star Citizen content sometimes where we would see Sandy talking about the game. It was just a lot of fun to hear her perspective sometimes, and you could see it was just interesting, when you get like the founders sometimes talking about a project. It can be pretty exciting. So it'll be nice to see her in person. She seems like a really cool person. And then obviously Sean Tracy, an OG of Cloud Imperium. It's going to be exciting to hear from him. So again, just gonna be a good event, everyone. If you see me there, definitely grab me. I do have some posters I'm going to be giving away. Do you guys want to see those real quick? I'll show you the posters that I created for the event. Let's see if I have them. And I'm going to have a version of this poster that I'm going to be giving away. That is not quantum related. It's going to be for, I'm going to be giving away a version of this poster pretty regularly on the channel moving forward. So now that I've worked out all my poster issues, it's this one here. So this is the Quantum Vegas 2955 poster. It's got all the ships here that are currently concepted or flight ready or whatever. Ton of ships. So let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. But it's a big, nice poster for those of you that will be at the event. These will be free. You'll be able to grab those. And then I have one more. It's like the classic Starjump Kraken Idris docking poster. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for it. Richard, I wish you were going. I would love to talk Star Citizen with you. That would be a huge treat. I did not get to make it out to CitizenCon last year. I really wish I could have. That would have been a dream come true, but it just wasn't meant to be. It wasn't in the cards. October's always a weird month for me too, because it's my daughter's birthday and my dad's birthday. So a lot of stuff going on there. And I always try to do stuff, fun stuff and big stuff for my daughter's birthday. All right, everybody, what are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about, let me get to it here. What are we talking about? We're talking about Mark II variants, right? Or ships that could possibly use Mark II variants, right? Oops, 1 second. So, what encompasses a Mark II variant here? And you can see a little bit of a mock-up I did for maybe a Mark II variant of the Hornet, something that borrows a little bit more directly and heavily from the kind of current RSI civilian ship language. But we're going to talk a little bit about possible Mark II variants. We're going to build a list of ships on Starjump Fleet Viewer. As a matter of fact, let's go back to Fleet Viewer. We're going to get my hats out of the way here. Let me knock this down. Starjump Fleet Viewer, as you all know, this is the app, myself, MkII, who's in chat, and Starlet all created. So we're going to be creating a list of ships that could use Mark II variants, okay? So the very first one we're going to put on the list is the Aurora. We don't need to put all the variants. I'm going to make all the variants in the new Mark II version, but we're going to change this to just Aurora. We don't need the length right now, really, so let's take the length off. So there we go. There's the Aurora, okay? We're going to put that ship aside. That's going to be one we're going to do a Mark II variant for. We're going to look at that today, okay? This, by the way, there's been a lot of people that have looked at Mark II variants before. MkII in chat, again, one of the creators of Starjump Fleet Viewer with myself, has envisioned his own version of the Mark II, the Mark II Aurora in the past. I don't know if you referred to this as a Mark II or not, but it's really, really cool. Richard, I know you are not on like the ship team, but hopefully you enjoy the ship discussion. And you know, on the Shipyard episodes like this, we generally talk about the ships of Star Citizen and the gameplay loops that those ships tie into, of which that's all of them typically, right? So we kind of cover all that. So it's ship and ship adjacent stuff. And then we also, on the weekly chat show that I do either Wednesdays or Thursdays, depending on my schedule, we talk about sort of bigger Star Citizen stuff like actual gameplay loop, game theory, you know, all that kind of stuff. Which, by the way, everyone, later this week, I'm kind of jumping around a bit here. Later this week, I want to do a sort of, actually, I'm going to do this probably tomorrow. Probably tomorrow night is, I think, when I got it scheduled. So tomorrow at like 9 p.m. on my channels, we're going to do sort of a 6-month review of the content that's been coming to Star Citizen over this past year. Again, it's now July 1st. We're 6 months in. We're halfway through the year. We're going to sort of do a review on all the content that's been coming to Star Citizens, the quality of life stuff that's been coming to Star Citizen over the past 6 months. As we know, it's been kind of a unique year. So that's what we're going to cover. Slight preview on that. I'm at the beginning of the year, when I heard that was the direction that CIG was going to take for this year, I was a little bummed. I won't lie. I was a little bummed about it because I was like, no, just get these features done. Get these features done. Let's get them in. Let's get them testing. I don't care if the game is broken. Let's just get these features created. But I will say, I've flipped a little bit on that now. I'm pretty positive on the content they've been doing this year. Even the events that didn't really appeal to me, I still thought were interesting. Some of the events appealed to me more than others, but what I'll tell you right away is all the events I've participated in, I've had a hell of a lot of fun in. I really have. In my Star Citizen playtime has dramatically increased this year. Even just getting in with VMXEO, I think we went down to the ASD. It's ASD, right? Facilities or ADS. I forget. Either way, we went down to those facilities and did some exploring around and checking things out. We had a blast, even though we weren't like really fully in you know, playing the content. We were just checking it out. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. So again, I think there's been some big successes with what they've been focused on doing this year. There's still 6 months to go. I think we still want to see some of those big quality of life fixes come in, like ATC and stuff like that. But in general, I think it's been a pretty positive year. We're going to go into that in more detail tomorrow night, okay, around ASD. Thank you, C Daddy. Appreciate it. C Daddy, salute to you. I hope you're well, buddy. Nice to see some CIG folks hanging out with us today. Really appreciate it. But yeah, I think it's been a pretty positive for 6 months. And you know, different people, before we'll move back over to the Mark IIs here in just a second, but one thing I'll say about this is that everyone, I think, independently has their own sort of metric for what reaffirms their belief in the game, right? For some people, it's going to be a stable universe. For some people, it's going to be content, right? Like you see on the screen right now. For some other people, it's going to be features, or for some other people, it's going to be core tech. For a lot of people, it's going to be a mix of all those things. And I was just talking with someone the other day, and if you go back 12 months from now, or 12 months ago, or even 24 months ago, and you really look at how far we've come, let's take 24 months, let's take 2 years. If you really look at the past 24 months on how far the game has come in 2 years, if you really step back and look, and sure, there's been hits and misses, obviously. There's been some stuff that's popped up that wasn't perfect or great or whatever. But if you really take a step back and look at those last 2 weeks, 2 years, if you look at those last 2 years, there's been a massive leap forward, I feel, on all fronts. Core tech, content, um, quality of life fixes. I'll say features, but only so much in like features in terms of we got pyro, right, and that a ton of stuff, but also the features we know are currently being heavily iterated on, right? So base building, crafting, so on and so forth, right? So when you take all that and you really look at just the past 2 years versus the past 10 years, the past 2 years have really been pretty incredible. And we hope when Squadron, takes off and is out as a full game, um, what that then return focus to the live environment is going to be the PU. And based off what we've had the last 2 years, I feel good about it. I feel really good about it. Again, it's not to mean that there's not, things that pop up that someone may not love because of a certain reason, but that bird's eye view, there's really been a lot of progress in my opinion. I talk about Star Citizen differently now than I did to friends 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 4 years ago. There's a slight different. Whereas before it was more like, oh, you're definitely playing a tech demo. Right now, I'm starting to change that tune a little bit, and I'm starting to refer to things a little differently. Not completely, but a little differently. And I think that's a great thing. So we're going to talk a lot about that tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Check the Twitch channel and the YouTube channel. You'll find it already. Well, at least on YouTube, you'll find it posted. I'll get it posted on Twitch. Make sure you, everyone, make sure you follow the Twitter or X, as it were. Follow me over there because obviously I put a lot of the updates there. Okay. Real quick, one other thing I wanted to bring up before we jump back to our awesome Mark II variants here is I wanted to remind everyone that the Perseus giveaway is going away. So for St. Jude this year, Starjump Guardians, Starjump raised over 20, what was it, 20, I have to bring the numbers up. $24,000 for charity during the month of April and May. So $24,000 raised. And if you all remember what I said, what did I say? I said if we go over $20,000 raised, I will personally give away an RSI Perseus. You all did that. You all came to the table. Huge donations towards St. Jude Children's Hospital for Play Live this year. So we are, of course, doing that giveaway. We're doing that RSI Perseus giveaway, which you can easily enter by going to that gleam.io link right there. Ton of free ways to enter. Make sure you get in on that while you can. The giveaway ends at the end of July. For those of you that did donate to St. Jude, don't forget that for every $10 you donated towards St. Jude Children's Hospital, I gave you a free entry. Okay, so if you donated $500, then you got 50 additional entries. Okay, I think the Gleam link, though, gives everyone like 5 entries for free. So you all have a chance to get in on it. It'll be an RSI Perseus, 120 months insurance. Went into my own coffers on that one. But I really want to find a big way to say thank you for coming out like you all did. There was some streams we did where within the first 10 minutes we had like raised $1,000. So really incredible. $24,000 raised in 2 months. So huge deal. Thank you for doing that for sick kids and their families. I really appreciate it. All right. Let's get back to the discussion at hand. We're talking Mark II variants, okay? So we're going to start with the Aurora, a ship I love to not love, okay? I just don't love this styling of RSI. I would like them to do an RSI Aurora Mark II variant, something that's a little bit more updated, a little bit newer. So I'm going to pull up 3D right now. Bear with me, everybody, as I do that. While I'm doing that, I want you all to be thinking about what Mark II variants you think we need, okay? But actually, before we do that, we really need to go back to something John Crew talked about, okay? So let's bring this up. Here we go. Okay, Mark II variants, okay? Our Mark II discussions are more active internally, so that is something they are having discussions about apparently. Again, by the way, this is stuff that was talked about by John Crew. I think most of this was like officially said. I know John had talked a lot about things kind of behind the scenes. So just a heads up, I believe most of this is pretty official. Hercules, the White Wolves, thank you for those follows. Bunkerfist gifted a 3 months subscription to Richard Tyre. Thank you for that, Bunker. Appreciate you very much. Zero resubscribed with Prime. Thank you very much. Ender fan subscribed with Prime 15 minutes ago. Thank you all. Don't know why I was getting the notifications until now. Thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it. I got the Javelin alert back up now. Okay, here we go. Mark II discussions are more active internally, but only considered for ships where the Mark I fully works. Okay, so it can't be a ship that's busted and we just want a new version of it because the busted one doesn't work. The old one's still going to work, but these are just Mark II variants. And the Mark II is primarily probably for lore reasons or design language reasons, quality of life reasons, but it still means the Mark I would have to work functionally, right? 2, ships that don't work well get reworks instead. So if it's a ship where its current design is fundamentally broken because game design has shifted or has, in the course of Star System 1.0, for example, right, where base building got rethought, sort of reconcepted. They went back and reconcepted the Consolidated Outland Pioneer. Okay, by the way, as I've said many times on my streams, I think the Pioneer reconcepting was one of the best reconceptings they've done. Kudos to the ship team for that reconcepting. As a matter of fact, I think the entire vision for how base building is going to be is leaps and bounds better than what it was. Okay, I'm backing this game primarily, by the way, for base building. That's what I want to do. So I think the way the Pioneer was just a lot of the old was scrapped and a lot of the new was brought into that ship, while still retaining a lot of the language going on that ship. Huge, awesome job there. I think I even sent Ben Curtis a message on that one saying amazing job. Next, a Mark II can come for a ship that already functions but has a visual style they want to depreciate. So the Mark I Hornets, okay? We got the Mark II Hornets, and essentially they have slightly different lines. They're a little sleeker, a little bit more refined. So right away, when I say lore or just visual design language, this is what I'm talking about, okay? And then they had a reference to, hey, there's Griffin Gaming. Griffin, I just went over at the beginning of the show a whole bunch about Quantum 2955. Super excited about it. But no Mark II reclaimer is planned because they would still need to update the Mark I and they don't want to duplicate work. What you're going to see with the reclaimer, for example, or ships like that, is you're going to see them probably do a full pass on the reclaimer, change a lot of the internal layout. You're going to see them change a lot of the ship function. It'll still be their salvager, but I think they're going to switch on how things totally work in that ship. I'm really excited for it. By the way, the reclaimer, as I've said many times, multi-crewing a reclaimer is one of the funnest experiences I had in Star System. Besides some of these cool events, just like emergent gameplay where you go out and do stuff, going with a few people on a reclaimer, we just had sort of a peaceful salvaging night was one of the funnest times I had in Star System, for sure. And I think that's, for our CIG folks that are possibly watching still, I think that's the great thing about Star System, right? We have these events, we have these things that are going on that are really exciting. They can kind of spice the current patch cycle up, but those things that we can always go out and do, right? The salvaging, the mining, the bounties, the whatever, those little gameplay loops that have their little cyclical loops that we can go out and just churn and grind through. When those are fun, then you have something, right? You have some magic, right? What's that famous saying that the Halo developer said one time, and I know it's not completely one-to-one here, but I think the Halo developer way back 20 years ago or whatever was like, if you could just find 30 seconds of fun and just repeat that, right? Well, while not every gameplay loops apply to everybody, if you can just find something for 30 minutes that's fun to do and just repeat that, that's what the reclaimer salvaging was. We were kind of doing the same thing over and over again, but it was just a lot of fun. All right, so let's go back here. I'm gonna take this off, so we kind of know why they would do a Mark II variant, right? Generally, it's going to be lore, visual, design, language changes, etc. Okay. Going back to the Aurora here, we do know the Aurora was kind of one of the first ships made for the game. So one of the things I wanted to do, and I'm going to bring it up here. I'm going to switch over to 3D here in a second, everybody. Let me get my windows ready because I haven't been in 3D for a while. Hopefully that is... bear with me, everybody. Okay, just moving some ships out of the way here. We're going to look at some spaceships. Okay, let me see if I can get my window up. There we go. Okay, there we go. Cool. All right, we are in Cinema 4D right now, everybody. Just looking at some ships. Let's open it up a little bit. Here's our Aurora down here. Whoa, went a little too fast. There's our Aurora. I don't know what's up with the lighting here, but there's our Aurora. Again, utilizing just kind of a really interesting design language that we don't really have for RSI ships now. I mean, even like these fuel intakes here, the engines in the back, the way these struts here are kind of set up throughout the ship. That's just something we don't have anymore. Some of these, and some of these elements you will see, yeah, Grim talking ship, yeah. Some of these elements you will see in other RSI ships, don't get me wrong. You will see some of these elements, I believe, in the Constellation. By the way, the Constellation can be a good Mark II ship. You will see in the Constellation, but there's a lot of stuff here that's just not used on RSI ships anymore. These style of doors, obviously, wouldn't be used now. There's just a lot of design language stuff that's very sort of alien to RSI now. So we have other RSI ships, though, that seemingly start to drift a little bit more towards where the current language is. So let me get rid of this light. What is this light right here? Kill that. You know, we have the RSI Mantis, of which we're about to get a variant of in the Meteor. But the Mantis brought on a lot of things that I think started to take us away from the Aurora and more into maybe what the modern RSI design language is. One aspect of the RSI design language, the modern one that I think is pretty prevalent, is sort of this like overlapping panels or like complex overlapping panels. Which is pulled off well on some ships, like the Zeus and stuff. The Zeus does it incredibly well. Where the Mantis, you could see, it felt like they were starting to play with that. But here's the Mantis. I've always been a little iffy on the Mantis. I like it. But there's aspects of the ship I don't like. Actually, the funny thing is the thing I don't like about the Mantis is primarily its interior. It just felt a little cold and uninviting to me. But regardless, the Mantis is a design language. And then obviously switching over here to the Zeus. This is not a fully textured Zeus model, by the way, sorry. But the Zeus really bringing us into that sort of modern RSI design language, very angular. I know a lot of people say very Dorito shaped. I actually think of it more as like arrowhead shaped, and a lot more aggressive. It's a lot sleeker. I don't know. It just has a lot of those aspects to it that I really like. So when coming up with an Aurora, right, that would take on some of those attributes, right, from the Zeus, from the Polaris, from the Mantis, take on some of those more modern RSI aspects, I came up with this. Okay, this is just a kit bash, by the way. This was, by the way, something I had been messing around a little bit with, and Execute from Info Runners challenged me and Trispone the other day and was like, hey, if you guys could do a Mark II Aurora, what would that look like? And I was like, oh, don't worry. I'm ahead of you there. Nugu84 just subscribed for 2 months in a row. Thank you very much. Salute to you. Just sent the Kraken overhead. Thank you very much. But, oops. Why isn't this working correctly? Okay. Did I just stand by? I messed my mouse up. Okay. But anyways, here is what I came up with. It essentially borrows heavily from the VMXEO says, I need to get in on this Aurora remake challenge. You do. I want to see your remake. I need to get you to texture this version, actually. Corsair Cowboy, glad you're joining us on stream. Hope you're well. There's Execute. Yeah, so this was a little bit of a challenge from Execute, and then I had already been working on some of this because me and VMXEO have had discussions about Auroras in the past. That is not anything new with us. This is something. Oh, or VMXEO is in chat right now. Hey, VM, how you doing, man?
There we go. It would help if I unmuted
there you go.
mic.
There you
doing
go.
Well.
Yes. So we're talking Mark II variants.
I'm very interested in an Aurora variant. I think we've all got our opinions on what an Aurora variant would look like. So I think
here's the
we
thing.
could all come up with some very different requirements too.
I think some very different requirements. There's questions surrounding would a variant or would a Mark II even go with the same sort of variants, or would they truly try to make it a modular ship? I don't know. But, the funny thing is there's a couple ways you could go with a thank you for that follow. I can't say that one. Myceres. Hopefully I got that right. Is that there's a couple ways you can go. There's a lot of RSI ships to pull from. Obviously we have the Connies, which I actually think are due for a Mark II variant. But there's the Scorpius. There's the Polaris, obviously. There's the upcoming Perseus. And then you could even technically pull a little bit from things like the Ursa. When I was originally going to redo the Aurora, I was like, oh, what if I use the canopy area, the windscreen area from an Ursa, sort of like how the Golem uses elements from the Mole, right? It's not completely unheard of. So anyway, there's a lot of ways you can go. I mean, I know someone in chat here just said, why didn't I use the Scorpius for the cockpit? And I'll tell you why I didn't. Because I was looking at the Scorpius as a military RSI ship, and I was like, I want to take just from the civilian, mostly from the civilian lineup, right? So my Scorpius Mark II really sort of borrows heavily from the Mantis. It uses the engines from the Mantis. The Zeus, obviously it borrows heavily from the Zeus, but still kept a couple things from the original Aurora, such as the cockpit. The only thing I did was flatten it out a little bit. I didn't make it so vertical. I flattened it out a little bit and gave it a little bit of a scale bump increase. I used parts of the Connie. If I click here and pull it up, you can see there's elements of the Connie that I just pulled up right here. But the idea was to give it a little bit of an interior on par with like an Avenger or something. But let me ask you this. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, VM.
I was going to say, I think that's about right. I wish I was more prepared. I could show some stuff off, but I have been playing with the idea of a Mark II Aurora.
Yeah.
And
me and you've talked about it a few times.
We talked about this more than a few times.
A few times. We talked about it pretty heavily. We even talked about doing a stream around a Mark II Aurora back when you put out the X-Wing Aurora concept. You know what I mean? That was something we talked about then.
We should have done it.
Yeah, we've talked about a few ships actually taking a swing at.
For my approach, I think you're right. It does need something of an interior. How big of an interior is a good question. I think using the interior of the Mantis is actually a pretty good metric. Because it's got it could be a little bit more minimal, but it's got about the size. It's about the right size range for an interior.
And when I look at it from a gameplay standpoint, I don't know if he's still watching, but obviously Richard Tyro was watching earlier. When I think of Star Citizen 1.0, and I try to do everything I think about with Star Citizen, I really do try to frame in the 1.0 landscape. And the reason I do that is because when we get to that phase, there will be a lot of new players that come into this game that do not have the backlog of knowledge that we all have, right? Because we live and breathe this game, and that's okay. We need those players. We need those players to play this that don't have that backlog of knowledge. But when I think about a player making that initial decision to get a game package, to get a starter ship, whatever that may be, I really do think it's difficult to understand what type of ship you need because the gameplay systems are going to be so deep that I have a hard time recommending any sort of like niche starter ship, and I would want to recommend the most general purpose ship of them all. So or out of the bunch. So for me, any starter ship I recommend is going to have some sort of minimal interior. You know what
And
I
I
mean?
think CIG realizes that
I
if you
think they
look
do
at
too.
the recent ships, starting with, I mean, the Titan was a move in that direction. I
Yeah,
think the Nomad was probably the first
the
starter that had
cutters.
a fairly, yeah,
Yep.
and then they continue with the cutters. I think the Intrepid is another great example
Yeah,
of kind of that
100%.
all-around ship. Maybe it specializes in a little bit in one area, but
Yeah,
you kind of need about that
and
size.
here's the thing, that interior doesn't even necessarily need to be like able to hold cargo, but it should be able to hold like a box or two. And I know
Yeah.
the Aurora, there's Aurora variants currently that can do that, but having one ship that someone can purchase, because right now even a new player coming into the game trying to decide between the different Aurora variants, it's confusing to them, I would think. But having essentially a ship like a Mark II variant of the Aurora that kind of covers you in a bunch of different things, right? So it's got a little bit of a cargo area, a little bit of bare minimum habitation, right? Which we'll see, I guess,
Mhm.
when we get whatever the next version of actor status tier 2, right? Hunger, thirst, and how all that really starts to play into our character's well being, along with death of a spaceman and future medical iterations and all that kind of stuff. But having some sort of survivability aspect with the ship, a little bit of cargo to carry one or two SCU boxes, and having a little bit of survivability, I think, is key for a new player. And who just Rage One just donated 5 tier 1 subs. Thank you very much, Rage One. Appreciate you. Thank you. Give you the old salute for that. Kraken's going overhead multiple times. Best ship in the game. Yeah, let me. I'll give a little tour around here too, real quick. I did
Yeah.
bring over the dual wings, the quad wings or whatever from the original Aurora. I tried to bring a little bit of that in here. You can see it when I go like this. You can see a little bit of those quad wings, kind of showing themselves there. Again, brought on the entire front section of the Aurora. Still single. If you go for scale, it still would technically be single person up in the bridge area. It's not much bigger than a standard Aurora. It is a little bigger again to give it some of that ability to have an interior. If I swing around to the back here, I would envision it again borrowing very heavily from the Zeus, where you have a very small ramp in the back. I'm thinking more like cutter sized or Avenger size, a very small ramp. You can get a box or two up there. Um, Again, it doesn't have to be anything too crazy, but I think this would, and again, it feels like it's RSI. It feels like it fits in the Zeus family, and it does borrow a little bit from even the Scorpius, not directly, but where you get the two elements that come past the bridge here, like the two little wing elements here. It's got a little bit of that design language going in. I kept some of the original Zeus or Aurora stuff. I just changed it. So, for example, the struts, which are kind of weird on the original Zeus, I did keep those. I just made them a lower profile and more blended into the top wing. Um, and then for the engines, I just straight up went with the Mantis engines here. You can see I can pull them off. Put the Mantis engines on there, just tried to integrate those in a way where they felt clean and simple. So I don't know. I think something like this could work for an Aurora variant, but what are your thoughts on an Aurora variant? I mean, the Aurora, do you think if they did a variant for it, a Mark II variant, do you think they need to cover all the bases for it, like the CL, what are all the LX? There's a bunch of variants for the Aurora, but do you think they need to do that, or do you think they should just make one, but make it a little bit modular? Or if not modular, a little bit more general purpose?
I'm gonna go with the latter, and I'll explain why. Something I coming up with an Aurora Mark II concept is getting it to the point of where you just described, to be more flexible, to be that at that lived-in starter ship. It becomes so unlike our Aurora that
Yeah.
it needs to be its own ship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So so you almost need to kind of break away from the Aurora Mark II and just come up with a whole new name for it. Um, yeah, keep the form factor. Something about that size I think is perfect, but just getting away from it's not even a Mark II. It is its own ship at that point. Um,
Right.
the
Which
other
is
issue.
which is I
Yeah,
guess what they have to do when a ship is, from what we've heard, that is what they sort of consider when the need is, I think, when there's too many boxes that need to be checked, that just a Mark II variant's not going to cover it, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, yeah.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
said, I mean, I think you've got the right size. Having the interior, I think just that cozy small interior that's able to
yeah,
carry, a handful of SCU more than the Aurora, but less than say the Zeus.
yeah,
I I think you've got that. I think we're on the right page. There is
yeah,
something that needs to fill that slot for RSI.
yeah. I think so too.
Um,
And again, I think that if the idea that the current direction for RSI is going to be, especially on the civilian ships, is going to be sort of in line with the Zeus and Mantis and or Meteor that's about to drop. Probably the Meteor,
mhm,
even a better example, which we don't
mhm.
fully, have imagery for. We have a little bit of imagery for, but if that's going to be the direction they want to go, then obviously the Aurora no longer, as it is, no longer fits that design language from a design
Yeah.
language standpoint. Now, if they were to go with a variant, or sorry, a Mark II variant of the Aurora, then they could do what they did with the Mark Ones of the Hornet, which are, they don't sell them anymore, which is what I
Exactly.
think they would do. They still have to support them, but I also think CIG. I mean, tell me if you think I'm wrong, but if I was on the ship team, I would also want to be a little bit careful of how many ships are in this backlog of ships that are not sold anymore, but I got to support. And with the Hornets, and if you add the Auroras on that, you're taking two of the ships that have like the most variants. You know what I mean? Mark One variants, which I think is a little. You
Yeah.
start to get to this place where it's like, how much is too much overhead? You know what I mean?
So
I don't know.
the nice thing about the Auroras is, unlike the Hornet series, which of course is needs to be consistent with Squadron 42, I
Right.
doubt we will
Right.
be seeing the Auroras in Squadron 42. So you don't have that legacy you're trying to hang on to.
Right. I know the Mustangs play a big role in Squadron from what we've heard. Um, so I know that those would be tricky to do. Like full on. Well, again, maybe
And the
maybe that.
Mustangs have already gone through a rework.
Yeah, they've already gone through one once. Have the Auroras? Have
So,
the Auroras already? Hey, Starlet, hope you're well. Salute to you.
yeah.
By the way, I missed some things in chat. Everyone, sorry about that. I'll go back and catch up here. We're talking Mark One or Mark Two variants here, people. Let's switch back real quick.
And
Actually,
really quick,
yeah.
info runners, we do need to talk.
Oh, I want to talk to. Yeah, you can't steal my VMXCO though. Okay, he's my right hand, and you can't steal him. Starjump, easy fix. Just before release, give everyone the Mark IIs for free, so that those so those that upgraded give extra money, and then there's no legacy to maintain. Yeah, I think you could do that. I also think too, if you wanted, I also don't see an issue with, if you already own the Mark One, sell like a Mark II upgrade. That's like a whatever, a little upgrade kit that is a fraction of the price, but upgrades your Mark One hull to a Mark II hull.
Like a
Um,
CCU?
yeah, I'm joking, Info I'm joking, buddy. Yeah, kind of like a CCU, but essentially like a kit. Like, you can buy like the privateer kit. You would be able to buy just like the Mark II upgrade kit. You know what I mean? It's not the price of a full ship. It's just a kit that changes your hull, your Mark One hull, to the Mark II hull. Um, maybe
I
something
will
like
tell
that.
you another problem I ran into trying to do an Aurora Mark II.
Yeah.
We all saw the X-wing, the pop-out wings.
Yeah.
That I did is just purely as a what if,
Yeah.
just to see how it looks. That was very far more popular than I ever expected it to be, and I mean, I did that years ago, and
Yeah.
still to this day, it's recycled
Yeah.
and viewed as actual official concept art, which I feel bad.
I know. I see this
I
pop
really
up
gotta
so
get.
much as official concept art.
I really gotta get. I get better at labeling my stuff as fan art, so people know that no, this is not real. What I ran into though is trying to upscale this and keeping those quad wings.
Yeah.
Every change I make makes it look more like an ornithopter. I don't know how to do an Aurora, a proper Aurora Mark II with those wings that doesn't look like a dune ornithopter.
Yeah. Well, what it's weird because it looks like the ornithopter if you're keeping the sort of Aurora hull intact. If you're if the hull of the ship changes, but you are keeping the quad wings, you start to maybe look like an X-wing, like the Scorpius does, or whatever, which isn't always a bad thing. And I don't think CIG has any problems referencing other ships, but I do wonder. Imagine if you took the Aurora as it is, right, and that whole back structure there, that's on the current concept image you made. Imagine that entire back structure there was mostly removed or heavily truncated. So think of the ship as a much smaller, much more like not as small as, but much more smaller as in like a Fury, right? But only the RSI version of that, where it's mostly the cockpit, some engines, and then these wings that fly out.
So something I looked at was actually taking
Could be kind of interesting.
That entire back body and lifting it up, and then the space where the bed is, opening that back into like a small cargo area. But again, that makes it look like a dune ornithopter.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how sometimes well, again, this goes back to design language though, right? And how important it is. So, yeah, info runners, execute if you want to jump in. Here, let's do this. Let me switch back over to my left monitor here. I want to map out which ships we think should get the Mark II variants though, because I want to start making this like a little bit of a project in the down months of the summer. I want to make this a proper thing here. So let's do this. Let's do this here. All right, let me drag execute. Hey, execute. Hello. What ships need Mark II variants? Like specifically Mark II variants, not like a new ship in the line that's a completely new hull, but like which ships, if any, deserve Mark II variants?
Connie keeps popping up in chat. I would say at the very least, the Connie needs an internal rework.
Connie, Freelancer, Starfarer.
Well, let's talk about the Connie then real quick. Does the Connie, because remember what they said, what John Cruz said, the ship needs to, its Mark I variant still needs to function properly. Does the current Connie, I don't know because I don't fly any of them, does it currently still work and everything's fine? I know it's got some design stuff people don't like struts and stuff like that, but that's not, anything.
It really needs a holdover. It's very legacy.
Okay. So you think that needs a rework then?
Yeah, I think it is in that territory. I think it's one of those ships that they have used all the way along, and it's a part of the learning process. Essentially R&D, and it's been reworked 2 or 3 times at this point. Freelancers in a similar state, but they just don't work because there's too much going on the inside. But they just well, look at the Phoenix. You bring up the Phoenix at Algorithm, you'll talk to you for 3 hours about it. So yeah, just be warned.
I'll give you 2.
That's a good one.
One problem Sorry,
Gladiator. No, I cut you off. The Gladiator. Someone mentioned that in chat. That's a really good one. Yes. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, just add to that, you mentioned the Freelancer and the Connie, and something that the Freelancer and the Taurus both share is they had that secondary cargo area that's just really hard to get to. So the Freelancer, it's that middle section. Taurus, it's the shielded compartment, but it's just not easily accessible. Something like that could benefit from the rework.
Okay. And some of these ships, like the Constellation, I'm just going to consider it like all of them that would have to be touched. But so these, let's focus on those 3 now because I want to sort of build a list. So Constellation, rework or Mark II variant?
I think that's got to be rework in my book.
Rework?
It's just too much. There's too much wrong with it. Like I've sat there and tried to fix it. Like, why did they make it so the Merlin docked so they had to build a whole bespoke system for the Merlin docking, where if they'd made it a little bit like the Carrack, where it just lands in the back. You could have then also. There's a whole problem with how the landing gear works on like how it's got to land, and they want it to be able to, the vehicle to be able to drive in the front and drive out the backs.
Yeah.
So because of that, they just have no landing gear on the front, so the whole thing lands and totters a little bit like what happens with the Hercules. But if you were there in the early days, it would literally land and then its nose would ditch into the ground. It doesn't do that anymore, but they seem to have some kind of fake landing gear or something.
I mean, VM, if you look at your model that we did for Fleet Viewer, we still have the hatch on top. So I guess the in-game ship still has the hatch on top and stuff, which they don't do anymore. Right? Okay, so maybe
that's an old
you know the Aurora literally has docking collars on they're docking collars on the Aurora, by the way. I don't know if you know that.
That's what
that's how much of a holdover it is. Like, none of those starting ships have docking collars. And Algrid will talk about back in the day when they pitched it at Kickstarter, the Aurora and the Connie were meant to have interchangeable components.
Oh, really? Interesting.
That's not a thing anymore, obviously.
No.
But yeah. It's hilarious. Like, they can swap guns and components. Yeah.
So I think the Gladiator could probably get a Mark II variant, because I think it's easy enough for them to keep the original functioning, and then do the Mark II variant.
Well, if someone had turned up to the captain's table this week, they would have heard the really interesting discussion about Gladiator, but they didn't.
I know.
That was slack. Anyway, we did go through this. One of the things John Crew talked with Algrid about was the bombing variant, because Algrid wanted to know if is that ever going to be a feature they're going to add to drop normal bombs, and he literally said it would have to be a variant. And there is an original concept of the Gladiator that doesn't have the turret. And it looks really sleek. I can send you a photo of it. Give me a hot second.
Yeah.
I sent it to Paul. I have to go find it now.
But purely from a functional standpoint, I feel like the Gladiator, and I'm seeing some of your suggestions, chat, for ships that you think would and would not make great Mark II variants. I'm kind of not writing those down, but keeping them locked in the head here, and we'll get to them or get to some of them. But from a functionality standpoint, the Gladiator still does combat right now. Like, it still functionally does combat and is not like broken from the combat gameplay loop. I think we could all agree with that, right? May not do it as it should, or as good as it should, but so let's put the Gladiator in the Mark II variant category.
I did want to say one thing to VMXO real quickly.
Yeah.
You know the how you're talking about the Aurora wings. Have you considered integrating the fans off the Connie into the wings of the Aurora, or some version of those? You know the fan lift.
Yes. So this is quite interesting. You bring that up, because if you look, Grim, do you still have Cinema 4D open?
Yeah.
If you open up if you look carefully at the wings, those fans are actually integrated into the wings, the original Aurora. So if you look very closely,
is it these panels here?
It's actually on the Aurora. I think it's I believe.
Oh, there. They are too. Yeah, they are too. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And these open up now. I don't have the. Actually, you know what? I stand by. I may have what I'm looking for. I was wondering if I had, because some of these are hollow models, some of these are actual in-game models. But let me see. I probably have an in-game model stand by. Yeah, I do. Here we go. Let me just pull up the
know. They're a cheap man's VTOL, basically, for those that don't know. Yeah.
And I don't know if they were ever functional or not, but
they are on the Connie at one point. But yeah, man, I've never seen them. I've never seen them functional. So yeah.
Oops. Nope. Let me see. I'm just curious if can these doors even be opened?
Yeah. So when I actually proposed this to Trisphone and Grim, they didn't listen, because I said, Can you guys picture a vertical Dorito chip, Aurora, And they went, yeah, give me 30 minutes. And like they both came back with horizontal ones. I was like, that's what I asked for.
Well, to be fair, I said that. The vertical requires a lot more thinking because it's just such a weird. So this is
weird. But the reason I pitched it was like when you're a smaller factor like that, it's the only time you'd ever be able to go vertical because it's small enough.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there thinking like, would they go there? Would they be that? Because yes, it does. Like it is the most standard ship in the game, so I think it's the one they wouldn't do it to. But I was just like, what if? And I, as I said, like I sent them some incredibly crude, like crayon-like drawings, and said, like, you can see. I did in like 30 seconds.
I just kidding. That's good.
Like, what if the bottom of the chip essentially splits and they become the landing gear and stuff like that?
Yeah,
but yeah,
and it's still something I'm gonna workshop a bit for sure.
I think the hallmark of this ship has to be incredibly easy loading and unloading of the boxes, and like things like this and the Mustang. Traditionally speaking, they have this like shit sits on the ground and you load it on, and even the new Intrepid does that. And my whole thing is like, I think you just need to make this incredibly easy to load.
What I wanted to do is click on this and see if I delete these panels because they're not separate entities. I wanted to see if there was a fan under here. Oh, okay, so they're just empty right now. In the game model, they're just empty. But there's something that's supposed to be there. There's doors here. So I wonder if that's supposedly where the fans are going to be. Because right now I can punch a hole straight through. Interesting. Yeah, I was just curious. So I wanted to bring that up. But yeah, you can totally tell where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, they'd only technically need to be on the bottom ones too, because that's where the air would flow out.
Yeah, and I'll switch back real quick. So this, by the way, going back to the Gladiator, this is the image you were talking about here, where the turret is not there.
Yeah, well, that's the original concept of it, and you got to admit that looks pretty sleek. Like you could even see a fighter variant of this thing. Like I know they like originally when they kind of made this, it was meant to be the bomber of the Hornet, right? But again, like things have changed. So, and I even said, like, straight off the bat, why the hell wasn't this an onboarding task? Why the hell didn't they take the Gladiator, bring it up to speed, and fix all the issues with it? That sounds like a perfect thing for onboarding. But anyway.
This like the canopy in some aspects obviously look kind of like old school, but I don't think that's a problem. I think the Gladiator is definitely due for a Mark II upgrade, and they could just stop selling the original one, and the original one is just left functional.
Yeah. Well, the Gladiator is actually one of the Jace Aerospace ones, like one of the really old ones before they came Anvil.
Okay, which actually from a lore perspective, it even makes sense that if they kept the original one as sort of the legacy.
Have you ever, so just to let you know, it's the one that we're going to be pushing. So me, Paul, like how we try and push one and try and get it into the vote.
Yeah,
that's the one we want to push because it's the only one that doesn't have a skin. It's the only ship in the game.
Is this the only ship now that doesn't?
Yep, it's now the only one left. And the other thing is, like, I would highly, and I recommended it on Paul's show, I recommended it on my stream, and I'll do it again here. Go out and fly it. There is just something about its clunkiness that actually makes it feel like it's straight out of World War II. It feels like one of those old World War II little bomber things.
Yeah.
And there is a lot wrong with it, but there's something that's really unique about it. I don't know how else to put it.
So I would then say that maybe even above the Aurora, I would say the Gladiator probably, even just from that lore aspect of it, is probably one of the leading candidates for a Mark II variant. For a multitude of reasons. All right, let's move on and talk about the Freelancer. So is the Freelancer, where we say that's a variant or a Mark II variant or a rework? And we got to consider all the Freelancer variants, obviously, the Max, Der.
Freelancer, we're on Mark II of the Freelancer series, right? From the original?
Kind of, yeah. But let's just simplify this a little bit.
But that was technically a rework, I'm just going to say, right? Because you can't buy the original one,
I think we'd agree with the exception of the turret. The back half of the ship is not a problem. Could we kind of all agree that?
Yeah.
The back half is not the problem. It's the front half that has the top. You can even see in the photo there, it's got the top airlock. That's not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
And then it's built for 4 people, but all the other medium ships, the highest ship count at the moment is 3 in the Zeus. All the others are basically built for 2 people. So this is a Connie level ship that's in a medium category, which is kind of the inverse of what Origin does. So it's a bit weird. It really needs its count dropped.
38 meters.
The only variant that actually requires 3 people is the Misery with the Miss, with the person being in the back to fire the missiles.
Yeah.
So if you actually do that, like I don't think it's full rework territory, but I think the whole front, internals especially, needs a massive overhaul. And then obviously that docking collar room needs to be kind of changed. And again, if you're removing that docking collar room, does it extend into the back or does it extend into the front? If you look at the variants, that's the room that changes a lot. So on the DUR, they add the scanners and stuff. You get what I mean? Yeah.
Well, so let's.
Here's what I would use for that middle room. Take an elevator like the Starlancer has, put that on one half, and put suit lockers on the other. You can fit 2 suit lockers, an elevator, and now it's a great little 2-man ship.
Yeah. Well,
that would work. I could say an elevator. The only thing I'd say is landing.
One of the nice things about moving those airlocks too is it sort of gives you the room back, because otherwise you almost have to have the room clear. You know what I mean, for the airlock and the entry and exit animations and stuff. So it's kind of nice. Let me ask you guys this, because this is something that I think could play a role, and I could see possibly have playing a role in the Mark II, or how they handled the Mark I version of the Hornet. Now, I think there was some lore built in there that was just the next, Mark II was just the next version of the Hornet, but on ships that are really prolific, right? So ships that A, have been around for a while, and B, are probably owned by a lot of people, okay? So I'm thinking Cutlass, Freelancer, Hornets, what's the other one? The Mustang, Auroras, ships that are owned by just a lot of people. Do you think there's, internally at CIG, do you think there's a little bit of consideration given to the fact that, hey, we need to update the Freelancer, but a lot of people own it, and there's probably a decent percentage, let's say 20% of those people, that really like what it is now, and if I change it, they're going to be angry. So we need to do a Mark II variant, because changing the ship once again, they're going to get irritated on. Now, I know they changed the Freelancer already once, but obviously a lot more people own the Freelancer now versus back when it was originally changed. Do you think there's any consideration given to that? Just the people that already own the ship that want to keep it as is, as long as it's functionable?
I would say so. I would say they probably look at it and say, you know what, it's not worth it. Let's move on to a better. Let's rework a better ship that no one's going to complain about. Like, I don't think anyone would complain if you rework the interior of the Starlancer. I'm not the Starlancer, Starfarer.
Right.
You know, granted, that's really a little bit more work than a smaller ship, but
sure.
I think they're probably looking at what is the lowest hanging fruit, and if it's going to annoy existing owners, then that might push it up.
And Scott Harris in chat says the game is not released, they should be able to change the ships. I agree with that. At the same time, on the flip side to that argument would be, there's people out there that look at their money that they paid as, I've already bought this ship, and I bought it because of what it is, not what they're going to change it into. So I can see both sides. Go ahead. I think
there's 2 parts. So if you get the variant right and fix all the issues, right? We've kind of seen that recently with the Asgard over the Valkyrie. We saw a lot of very upset Valkyrie owners, right? So that tells you if you do it right, people want the new one, right? So say they do this new Freelancer right, and I want to get at what I was talking before about when I said about what I put in chat. If you look what they did with the Mark IIs, they essentially fixed all the issues the Mark I's had, and then basically what they did was they made it an extra $50, and then everyone is now upgraded to the Mark IIs, and then just before release, if they just go, oh, by the way, we're just making all the Mark I's Mark IIs now, and all the people that paid the extra money, too bad, you had it for 2 years, that was what the $50 extra was for. You see, that it's a money-raising thing. So they're essentially making upgrades a money-raising thing, but if you sit on the Mark I think 9 times out of 10, they're just going to think about all the work they have to do on the Mark I. What's easier for them? Just to roll it straight into a Mark II and drop all the Mark I's? They're going to do what's easier for them.
Yeah.
So they're just going to leave the Mark I's where they are until such time that they become,
thank you, Hudson,
unbasically usable. and then just roll everyone into Mark IIs. I reckon that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I thought it was interesting that just kind of leaning off what you just said, I thought it was really interesting and semi-surprising that when we got the Mark IIs of the Hornets, they stopped selling the Mark I's, which allowed them to do sort of a big final chance to buy sale on those. But do you think that they did? And it may be the answer may be both of these. But do you think the reason that was done was that A, they were trying to eliminate confusion for people buying ships, and or B, were just not enough people buying the Hornet Mark I's anymore for it to really matter? Money. Okay.
It's money. It's money. Like they like we did a whole episode recently on marketing. Only I think it wasn't this the one that came out yesterday, but the one the week before. And it's really obvious to us that the whole reason they're doing this is they need to run. Like if you look at games like Grand Theft Auto, right?
Yep.
Whatever it costs, they needed that amount of money again to do the marketing. CIG don't have that type of money sitting around, right?
Yep.
So they need to raise as much money as possible. So when next year comes around and there's this marketing push, and let's be honest, if let's just say for argument's sake, they're releasing Squadron at CitizenCon.
Yeah.
Think about all the other games you know. How far out are they going to start that marketing campaign? Is it 12 months? Is it 6 months? How much money do they have to spend? And you'll notice as well as I have, and VMX, I'm sure you can bring this up as well, the little YouTube videos over the years, the little teasers here and there. They've been testing all these little marketing things over the years to try and work out exactly how to spend this money as mostly as effectively as possible.
Yeah. By the way, everyone, since we're talking freelancer variants and all that kind of stuff, our good buddy Hudson Hawk has a Spectrum post already about it. I'll post the link down here in chat if you want to check it out. I know Sir Burticus replied to it. Burticus has got some pretty cool Genesis Starliner reconcepts. So, yeah, check that link out. I will definitely check that out, Hudson. All right, so going back to the freelancer then, variant or rework? Each one of you give your vote on that. What do you think? Execute. What do you think first?
I think it's an internal rework. I don't. Okay. Maybe some minor outside stuff, but I would be disappointed if they keep doing this Mark II shit. Let's just put it that way.
Right, but we know they're at least talking about it with certain ships. And here's the thing. If a ship has all but dried up in terms of, I'm just going to play devil's advocate real quick here on the business side of things, because again, I want CIG to make money. I want the game to be a game and be able to be supported. And I mean, I've said it a million times. I personally hope in the future they go to a subscription model, but I'll put that aside. So if they need to continue making money, if there's certain ships that have just dried up so much in terms of their value that like no one's buying them, and it becomes one of those things where the upkeep on them it isn't worth it, then I am totally fine with CIG doing variants or reworks on them to sort of not just make them better, but also just make them interesting to people to want to purchase. I mean, there's going to be ships, obviously, that are the least purchased ships. Because, if anytime you have a bunch of stuff, there's going to be some that are like the unpopular ones. But ships that are so important to that small, medium ship gameplay, which I do think is going to be a bulk of Star Citizen's gameplay, those ships, I think, need to be highly monetizable. And I think that especially going to the freelancer now, especially now that we have some really good... I'm going to divert again here, for example. Like, for example, if you take the Zeus to me is really interesting because it's technically bigger than the Cutlass and the freelancers and that kind of range of ships, but it really it plays in their playground, and there's no reason why you wouldn't get the Zeus or Spirit over, or there's no reason why you would choose the freelancer, in my opinion, over the Zeus or the Spirit, in my opinion. other than just pure subjective aesthetics. But from like a functionality standpoint, the Spirit and the Zeus do things so much better than these ships. They're only 10 meters bigger. They still have about the same quote unquote crew requirements, right?
I think the one that breaks that is the Max. Because the Max is the only medium ship in the entire game that can carry medium vehicles. That's usually a feature held over for like the bigger large ships.
Doesn't the Zeus do that?
If you've ever no, the Zeus store is deliberately designed smaller so you can only fit a Cyclone in it. And if you've ever loaded, the Connie is a large. That's what I'm trying to say. Like it's got the features of the Corsair, the MSR, and the Connie, and all those ships up there. They do that, but it's stolen that feature and it's in a smaller package. And if you've ever loaded cargo into the Zeus, you'll understand why it's really dropping off, because the most popular variant of that was the CL, and the CL just is terrible for loading cargo into. It's a fucking nightmare. To get that extra 8 SCU, you've got to have special boxes as well. And when you load stuff into the Spirit or the Max, it's really easy. It's just so easy. It's just a square little space, no funny messing around. And again, because they made that door smaller, you've got to get all the boxes through that small door.
You're talking about on the CL?
Yeah, on the CL.
Yeah.
They're all got the same size door.
Yeah.
But it's the same problem.
Yeah. Is the reason because of like the struts for the door, the hydraulic lifts?
It's mainly because it's partially the size, but it's also because on the side it's not uniformed grav plating, so you can't just put the same boxes everywhere. Like everyone else has like a square grid or a rectangular grid to place the cargo. This thing is like a rectangular grid with two small little ones on the sides that basically can only hold, the biggest box it can hold is a 2 SCU box. So you've got to put you've got to have four 2 SCU boxes to basically get the cargo all in there. So you've got to essentially take a box and break it down to get to the same amount of cargo as a Freelancer Max. Freelancer Max, you just chuck it all in, then you go.
VM, what do you think for the Freelancer? Mark II variant or rework?
I'm going to say rework, and I'm going to add a couple disclaimers to that.
Okay.
I think the variant of the Freelancer is what we got in the Starlancer. I think they relooked at everything and we got the Starlancer out of it. It uses a lot of the same language. It fixes a lot of the stuff. So I even though it's not the same ship, it's the spiritual successor to the Freelancer.
That's probably a good way to say it, the spiritual successor. Because it's quite a bit bigger, obviously, but
exactly. In terms of rework,
it is funny how they have the same crew counts, isn't it?
But if you remember, when the Starlancer was sort of first leaking out, a lot of people, I remember this, thought it was going to be a new Freelancer, like a reworked medium ship. But anyways, go ahead, BM.
Well, I mean, it is obviously a new ship, but in a lot of ways, it takes what made the Freelancer good and just made it better.
Yeah.
In terms of the rework there, I don't think we're going to get a Freelancer rework for a while, and I'll explain why.
Yeah.
We actually got one not that long ago to put all the components in that rear bay, but they didn't really change anything else on the Freelancer. So I think the Freelancer's at a place where they just kind of want to, good enough.
It functions.
There's a big reason for that. It's in Squadron. And I think basically what you're saying, I agree with you. When this gets reworked, it's going to have to be after 1.0. Like they'll come back to it and change it. There's so many things that are holdovers from the original design. Do you guys remember when the engines rotated?
Yeah.
You can actually look up the Mist commercial with that guy from one of the guys from the X-Files. He does the commercial, and the wing sweep. They don't need to do that anymore. So if you actually think about it, you could actually make the whole ship wider or shorter. Like and also John Crew talked about when they do Mark IIs, it's when they have a drastic visual change. And if you look at a ship like the Connie, it's probably going to have to have a drastic visual change because they've tried to stuff all that stuff in it and it doesn't work. It's the same thing with the Freelancer. They've tried to stuff all this stuff in and it doesn't work. The Starfarer is another one. They've stuffed all this stuff in and it doesn't work. So it's probably going to get a lot smaller, right? You look at something like the Gladiator, that probably doesn't need that because it's still fairly functional. It's just
Well, I think the
different
combat
upgrades from the guns and stuff.
I think the combat ships almost are some of the easiest ones to sort of still be functionable, right?
Yeah.
By the way, Guardian says the only way I can really get on board for Mark II, and by the way, hi Guardian, hope you're well, is if they give deep discount opportunities for the Mark I owners. I fully agree. That's what I was saying earlier, is that I think if you own the Mark I variant, there should be like a $20 or even a $10 Mark II upgrade kit you can get to upgrade your hull. Now you lose the Mark I variant, but then you get the Mark II kind of cheaper than you would buying it outright, obviously.
So if you just take what I just said there
Yeah.
and apply it to the Aurora, now if they're removing beds or the needs or essential needs for a bed, or say we remove the bed from the Aurora, that functionally changes the entire ship, and I think it makes it rework territory for the Aurora as well. But
yeah. Okay, so I put a couple of other ships in the rework category. Obviously, 600i we know is getting reworked. Reclaimer at some point will get reworked. Starfarer, Freelancer. But moving back to variants real quick, or Mark II variants, are there any other ships we can think of that are Mark II variant territory? And again, some of the need for that may be purely just marketing driven, right? Or money driven, and that's fine. But are there any other ships we can think of that need that? Are there any manufacturers, for example, that have changed their design language to be different at this point? The only one I can think of right offhand is the Mustang. Is the Mustang technic? And I know that plays a big role in Squadron, though. And that's maybe another reason why it would get a Mark II upgrade. But is the original Mustang, do we consider that like in line with Consolidated Outland's stylings? Maybe I'm wrong.
I thought the original was cooler. And
where was more insect like?
Well, they had it landing on its wings, and then the very next ship they did is the Nomad, where it lands on its wings. It was kind of like, what?
Yeah.
But as you said, I reckon it was changed so because it had to do something in Squadron.
Yeah, I've heard the Mustang has a big role to play in Squadron. I don't know for sure, but
someone just brought up the Reliant.
Yes, that's a good one.
The Reliant.
That's an interesting one.
All right, let's talk about. Well, let's say the Mustang real quick. Real quick on this one. What do you guys think? Rework or Mark II variant opportunity there? I think Mark II variant for that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like the externals on the Mustang. If any one thing would change, it would be the internals on the Beta. It doesn't quite flow like the old style did.
Execute. What you think?
It's just not as cool as the old one was. And I know I'm going back a lot here for other people,
but that may be a perfect reasoning for a Mark II variant. Maybe the Mark II variant can try to recapture some of that original design language in a more updated form. But I think the Mustangs are still pretty functionable, right? I think you would all agree with that.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it from a function standpoint. It's just like, again, like I have a Mustang Omega, one of the red ones, the AMD ones, and I love the old one, and the new one just feels like a skin. Like it feels like it's got no reason to exist because it's just a gamma with a skin. Where the other one had functional, like extra boosters and all that. Like, you know how they added extra fins to things for racing and stuff like that? They removed that from this, so I do think they'll go back to it eventually and gold pass it at some point. But I don't think, unfortunately, it's rework territory because there's nothing functionally wrong with it. The only one I would agree with is VMXMO. Again, it could just be reworked on the internals, though.
Yeah.
I have an interesting one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going over the MPUV P, which is the one that carries escape pods.
The P is the personnel, so
it's
that one.
The personnel. So the MPUVs have gotten a Mark II, a really nice upgrade ever since the T came online. The cargo and the personnel pods, though, are pretty much still the same. And this came up the other day because I think I was playing with another team. Actually, I think it was our JRDF crew. We needed a good short-range personnel transport, and I think the only one we have in game is the MPUV personnel, and it's just the MPUV itself is like really nice, but the pod itself needs.
Well, and let's remember It's a squadron ship too.
It's a squadron ship. Yeah.
So their Mark
Yeah.
1 will have to live as is. So again, or I call it a Mark 1. The original will have to live as is. So again, to me, that's always a strong argument for a Mark 2. Because if you need to change anything, you can't screw around with the squadron version.
So me and Adri
especially
have this. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and especially with that ship, you know, those pods are integrated into so much other. It's integrated into the Javelin. Those are the escape pods on the Javelin. I think the 890 Jump uses them, so it touches a lot of things. But we don't really have a good short range personnel transport. We have drop ships, but we don't have that small size. Just get someone from upper atmosphere orbital down to a planet.
They need to make a cut of steel. That would do that problem perfectly.
Or a Pisces transport. Personnel transport, yeah.
I don't think. I'm just gonna say I don't think they're gonna be able to put steel on the end of any ship's name moving forward. It's not. Yeah. I feel like it's been sullied on the marketing side of things. Okay, so I have a middle column here, by the way. That's a question mark. So what do we think for MPUVs? We think that's a good candidate.
I just want to say one thing about the MPV. Like the Atlas, me and Agrid have this theory. They've been selling things to raise money, right? Mm-hmm. So if you, instead of just making something coming out and be modular, you can literally sell it as separate variants, and then later when they put it in game, they just make it modular, because then it seems like a benefit to everyone that brought one of those variants. So you look at the Atlas Geo, you can clearly tell that they're exactly the same thing. All they've done is their hand comes off and you put a different hand on. So say they make a salvage variant, they can sell that for $5 extra, and then essentially when they put it on game, everyone becomes happy because it's like, oh, here you go, now you can use the other two variants. It actually makes it sound like a win. So it's the same thing with this MPUV, because if you think about it, we already know that they come off and they can change because they've told us this. So it is the same ship. So if you buy any of the MPUVs, you'll be instantly getting the other two eventually when it comes functionally in game.
Something really quick I just want to add on to the Atlas discussion is when they came out with the Geo, they actually made changes to the Geo, like substantial changes to the way the Atlas geometry. I think they added, like, there's a battery port now. They had added in all the jump jets, so it wasn't so simple copy paste and then add on a backpack. They actually made a bunch of changes to the base Atlas.
They're upgrading it. They're upgrading it as they go along, because if you go back to the Atlas, it's now got all of those features too.
And I will say, to play devil's advocate for the money raising thing, which again, I don't look at this as a negative for CIG. They do need to raise money.
I don't.
But I would say that I'm still a little surprised personally that they left the money on the table, so to speak, for the combat Atlases. Now, I agree. I think you've said it in the past. I think we're going to get one. That's for sale at some point, but still a little surprised.
I think it's like what they're doing with starter ships. They've just got someone that's going to pop out one a year, and they'll rotate it around, and it'll go through between different artists. There are patterns at COG, right? So we get starter ships every AIE. We get a medium ship every second citizen kind of type of thing. Sure. I reckon every September, and if you think about it, that's the lull period, and it also starts the hype for CitizenCon. That's what the Atlas did last year. So again, we know in the files that there was an Aegis Hermes, and almost every single one of these things that we find, it takes time, but they come out. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, what's coming out next month, boys? Do you know what's coming out next month?
As Foundation Festival or Shipwise?
It's called the RSI Meteor.
Oh, yeah.
You know what that is?
Yeah.
Right? Oh. RSI Meteor. You've seen the sneak peeks. It's essentially a modified Mantis, right?
Yeah.
Do you know how I knew it was a modified Mantis even before I'd seen a photo? Because in the files, it was literally called EMP Mantis 12 months ago. We've seen this with multiple ships now.
So what's the current Mantis? It's a snare ship? What does
it
have?
QED.
It's the only true QED. So you've got a snare that holds you there, and then you've got the one that pulls you out. It's the only one that can pull you out.
By the way, everyone, this image you're seeing here is the Meteor image.
Yeah, they're bespoke guns, by the way, integrated into the wings. They're size 5s. I don't know about you boys, and I'll put this up to you, but being size 5s, that puts it like, think about the Guardian Heavy Fighter, that's size 5s, but because they're bespoke, they can change the way they fire. So I think realistically, generally when they're doing bespoke guns, they don't want you to have the freedom to use all the guns, so it allows them to balance things lower. I think this will probably have a slower fire rate, but it'll be like between a normal, like say a medium and heavy fighter because of that. And you'll also notice it's also still got the 2 size 2s on it.
Yeah, and you may be right on the tuning for sure. I do distinctly remember, chat. You all may know the video that was said this. I do specifically remember John Crew commenting on the bespoke size 6 on the Polaris as being better than what a normal size 6 would be. Now that may just be for that specific ship and that specific gun. I'm just saying the possibility is there for this bespoke weapon to be better, I guess.
It goes both ways. It allows them to tune them up or down to what that specific ship requires. So you can do the same thing in the Ion and on the Ares as well as the Polaris.
Perseus,
but I think in this
Perseus
case, you tell me. Well, again, you tell me if I'm wrong. You tell me if you think I'm wrong. But I just don't see because again, if this is like a Guardian, it instantly kills the Guardian, and that means the Mantis goes from $150 ships to like $300. I just don't see them doing that after they just did that with the Guardian. I could be totally wrong though, but I honestly think they're aiming for around $200 with this thing.
So you're thinking the hey Bingo, hope you're well, buddy. So you're thinking the Meteor then has dual size 5s, the dual size 2s. I know it carries some missiles and an EMP. Is the thinking?
Yep. Yeah, and I think that the like I try to think of the gameplay of this ship, right? I think that it's basically got. I think those size 5s are, and I'm again, I can only speculate, and I'd love to do that with you guys too, because when you do it on your own, you obviously come up with the mistakes. But I try to think of how you would use this ship, right? And it's some kind of strike craft. It's got to be some kind of thing that basically is just, think about the other ships we have that do EMP, right? They're disabling people. Yeah. They're generally fairly aggressive. So this thing is probably coming at you from range with the size 5s, and then once it gets in close, it's using the size 2s and the EMP. So that's where my brain goes, but you guys tell me what you think.
Citizen Ninja says, RAP Antares.
Pretty much.
I mean, yeah, I don't know what you think of VM. This, to me, again, the Meteor starts to land perfectly, and the more I'm starting to learn about it, is landing into the definitely is going to be an earning game for me, especially if it has the EMP on board. It means it's appealing to a very narrow field of future gameplay for me. So, and again, Phantom, thank you for the follow. I do want to, go
real quick. How do you also separate it from where the Scorpius is at? I just want to bring that up as well, because you don't tend to have ship manufacturers that cannibalize their own shit.
Yeah.
So how do you? So just remember where the Scorpius is sitting. It's what 250, 240, somewhere in there. How do you separate that Mantis? Like, how do you put it above, which is insane in my book, or do you put it in below? But again, if they're trying to raise money, I can see the above being a real thing. I really can.
Well, and we know, in terms of our Mark II variant or reworks list, we know the Mantis ain't going to be on there because obviously they're doing the Meteor, which means at the very least the Mantis is just getting a few little rework internal stuff. So, real quick on some of these question mark ships, because I get about 15 more minutes. Real quick, Reliant, rework or variant, or rework or Mark II?
I think the problem with the Reliant is the flight model. We don't have the flight model to support any of the alien ships. It's basically heavily based on the Xi'an stuff.
Yeah.
I think when the things like the Scout and some of the other vertical ships get their stuff, I think the Reliant will see its time in the sun. I think the biggest problem with the Reliant, though, is its lack of cargo based on its price compared to other ships like the Avenger. It just needs some cargo integrated into the wings, and I think it'll be fine.
Cool.
So essentially, that Reliant needs to be in line with the what is it, the 315P that has 12 SCU.
Gotcha.
Currently, it's got it's got 6. I think it needs it doubled.
So 3 in each. I thought the Reliance did carry 12, so it's 6 smaller.
I think. I'll double check because it's been a hot minute. Hang on.
I don't know shit about the Reliance, so you're probably right. While he's looking up that, what is your opinion on the Hurricane VM?
I forget it's even exists most of the time.
6. No, it is 6. It's
6. Okay, gotcha.
I think the Hurricane needs love because I think that's man. Have I even seen a Hurricane?
What does it need?
Game?
What does it need love for? I love it. It's great. There's nothing wrong with it.
I just never see it in game.
I mean, I could take it out quite a lot.
Well, I don't see it a lot. I don't see it a lot.
Well, when me and Agri go out in a fighter, that's the fighter we take because it's actually smaller than the Scorpius. We found that it makes you work better as a team because when you take the Scorpius, you and the pilot have the co-pilot or the gunner, and you have the same guns.
Yeah.
But with that, because the turret gunner has better guns than you, it makes you work better as a team.
But
it's a psychological thing. We've seen
Sure.
Hurricanes versus Scorpius teams, and the Hurricane team wins every time because they're working together.
So let me ask this then. The Hurricane is an old design, though, in terms of lore, right? It's one of the original, Jace
Another
Aerospace,
Jace,
right?
Same as the Gladiator. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for that reason alone, I think they could do a Mark II variant of the Hurricane. I don't know
Quite
if we
easily.
technically need one, but they could do a Mark II variant purely for marketing reasons, just purely for marketing reasons. So I would think that one would sit over in the Mark II variant category because it's still functional and does well.
Yeah, I think you could, but I think the other part of it is like keeping that older style. Like they've got some manufacturers in game where, like, look at the Perseus. It's meant to be a ship that was like 500-600 years old, and yes, now they've modernized it. But there are also other ships that are 200 to 300 years old, and they haven't been updated at all. So if they're wanting to keep that older aesthetic with some ships, and you got to remember, you've got 200 plus ships. Some of them you're just going to want them to feel old. So
true. With the
you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, but with the exception of, and I'm going to bring up this image that you sent me a while back, VM. Going back to these kits that we know are now majorly a thing that CIG is doing. They've started to organize the files in that way. Those ships that are outliers, like the Hurricanes, like the Mustangs and stuff like that, they end up being almost, just purely from a game dev standpoint, almost end up being these like isolated things that have no kit application to them. They don't use the same type of engines or even the same maneuvering thrusters or the same panels or any of that kind of parts and pieces. And I do partially wonder if, and I don't think they're like deliberately trying to do this, but I could see it being a consideration where as many ships that they're currently on selling, because again, remember the Mark I they took off the store, but the ships they're currently selling, being able to tap into their kits from a development standpoint, I think they look at as a major benefit just from a game development standpoint. And is the bigger their game development, the bigger their ship development team gets, the more the importance those kits are going to have on them, because more people means they're going to be sharing a lot more stuff. So again,
I think you answered your own question.
Yeah,
I'm going to qualify that.
Yeah. So
I would qualify that.
So purely for that reason alone,
you go first.
I could say.
Go
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think the kits that they're building is good for your medium or your large size ships and up when you're rebuilding.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah,
that's exactly. Because I agree with him.
What happens a lot of the ships, especially the older ones, they would just borrow pieces off of each other all the time. Especially the older ships. It doesn't, not even the same manufacturer. You find a ship and you're like grabbing a landing gear from this other manufacturer or an engine.
Like the Vulcan. The Vulcan looks very Anvil.
Right.
Even in-game
started out as Aegis.
Yep. So even existing in-game stuff that just happens, all things you find working in Starfab. They kit bash from other ships, basically.
Sure.
If you think about it from a logic perspective, this is why I said I think you answered your own question. When smaller ships are smaller, they just don't have the internals, or they don't have very much space anyway, so they can't utilize the kits. Now they're building bigger ships like the Ironclad. You can see the benefit of the kits, because then when they come around to build a Kraken, they can just come back to the kit that's been organized. If they go back and do a Caterpillar rework or whatever it is, they can go back and use the kits. Like, it just makes sense to organize all this shit so it's shared.
That, by the way, it's funny that we're talking about this. That is actually one of the major reasons. I mean, again, I know why they're doing it for gameplay, that they want to get in the game sooner rather than later. But that is, I think, what shocked me so much about the Pioneer going into active development, because I was like, oh my god, they're almost doing what they were trying to do with the Banu Merchantman, where they were like trying to jump to the biggest ship of that manufacturer, and they don't have the assets for it. You know what I mean? So I was really but I know with Pioneer, it's all about gameplay. They want to get base building going.
Yeah,
so.
I think
they might have the assets if Pioneer Consolidate Outland has a presence in Squadron 42.
They do.
They might have that kit.
They might,
and they do have that really big the 808 ship that appears in that. You know, with Gladiator flows over the top.
Yeah.
So he's right on that thing. But also by going to the big one and working down, they're probably going to start building the kit.
Yeah, I agree.
If you think about it, so, you know, and again, the blue silhouette.
Yeah,
there is a medium ship there by Consolid Outland.
Correct.
What if that was built first and we just never heard about it?
Right.
So there could be technically 2 or 3 ships there that are coming. Like, imagine you get to CitizenCon this year, and they just drop a Consolid Outland ship that's the size of the Galaxy.
Yeah, possible.
Or the Ironclad, and it's just flight ready straight off the bat.
Yeah.
We would never know, but it could be. You never know.
Be. Those are always exciting too.
I'd be in love if they did.
Yeah.
By the way, really quick, how did we end up with 2 Hudson Hawks in chat?
One on Twitch and one
one's the 30K version, and the maybe he's watching on both channels.
Apparently, one is the Apple version. You know, we're gonna have to throw you guys a small knife and have you duke it out.
There's some people that watch on both channels. All right, real quick, last question for the sake of time. I've started my little list here, and I am going to save this because I think some of these would be fun to do reworks on, just for fan concepts. But last one I want to cover today before wrapping up the show: MPUV. Do we think that is a rework, or there would be a Mark II variant? I'm going to go ahead and give you my vote on it. I think it'd be a Mark II variant simply because it has such a stranglehold in squadron.
I don't think it has the same problems that any of the other ships do. I don't see those issues because they're all. It doesn't have an internal. The only internals are literally in the pod. It's just the pod that needs the rework, if anything, not the ship.
The pods need the rework. We actually already got the Mark II variant in the form of when the MPUV-T came out. They actually significantly changed. Yeah. Actually, the exterior changed a lot.
So maybe that one comes off the list.
The cockpit changed quite a bit. So it's subtle, but it definitely got Mark II'd.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So
and I think
the rest of the pods need that love too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the other thing I got to ask is this a necessity list? Because if you look at this from necessity, no. I think you can remove things like the Mustang and the Hurricane. They're like, this would be nice, but they're not essential. But there are other ones that I think are essential.
That to me is sort of almost even what I think is like the priority list of them. So, definitely Mustang and Hurricane at the bottom. And look, we just covered a few ships here. We haven't gone through all of it. There's probably 15 that could go in here that could totally replace those. And we'll keep going in future shows. But I just wanted to get a few down because as I had fun doing this Aurora one, and I was like, oh, it might be cool to re-envision some other ships. So maybe the Gladiator is a good, solid next one to do. I'm going to switch over real quick here.
Oh, that's a big one. No. You got to add that one. The MSR. No.
Yeah.
The stilts. That shit needs to go.
Which one?
That is in such.
Oh.
So Algrid. So once I explained it to Algrid, he could never unsee it. Right. Mm-hmm. You go in that ship, and when you realize all the rooms are basically on the stilts of the vents below, and you realize how much bigger that ship become just to have these useless vents below. That there's even things like this elevator in the back area. Like that wouldn't be there if the vent, it just destroys the entire ship for you when you realize that it's on stilts.
The stilts remind me of if you've ever worked in a proper data center with a raised floor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's where all the underground vents are.
I still really like the MSR. I think it could use a few nips and tucks and tweaks and stuff. I've said multiple times though. I think that the MSR could use a variant that is just.
Do you know how much it grew
a bit. It did grow a lot. Yeah, it grew a lot.
There's an actual old photo of it next to the C2, right? And it was essentially a medium ship. So it was the size of the Spirit.
It was that original top down.
It's now twice the size. Like there's an old photo of it next to the Connie, right? And it was like, it was literally like the back half of the Connie. You put it next to the Connie now, and it's bigger than the Connie.
Yeah,
like it disgustingly increased in size. You got to remember, it originally was meant to only hold a Cyclone, and it got so much bigger that it now carries a Rover.
It did to me exactly what happened to the Carrack. It grew a lot, and not only that, but changed its silhouette quite a bit. It got fatter for sure, and whatnot. But I actually think the MSR could get a variant because its internal space could be re-envisioned for other variants in really interesting ways. It has a lot of space inside the ship to play around with. Real quick, everyone. Obviously, it went back to my Aurora concept image that I was, or concept kit bash that I was messing with. I do really like this. I need to make a proper high res render of it with good lighting. But I do really like this. I would love for CIG to do something like this. Obviously, Mark II variants and reworks. Everyone's going to have an opinion. I don't think there is a right or wrong opinion on some of these. Some of it, it's quite clear in the terms of the Hornets was done specifically just for aesthetic purposes, by and large, for design purposes. I don't think there has to be a big reason. Obviously, there could be marketing reasons, because when you do a Mark II variant, you can do your big final sale. The original ones make a chunk of money. There's a lot of options there.
Can I just give one really similar thing to what VMXMO was saying about the MPUV? There are other grounds for other ships, and I'll give you a really recent example: the Raft.
Yeah.
They in most cases, if you listen to what John Cruz said, they're only going to do Mark IIs when it's a radical visual change on the exterior. So a lot of these ships are not going to need Mark II stuff. Like they don't need to do a Mark II on a Gladiator. Yep. They just need to change some of the functional things. So I think you're going to find Mark II is a rarity, it's not going to be a common thing you're going to see.
And I hope that's the case. I mean, I don't want every ship to have a Mark II variant. I really don't. I think, though, there's a couple places where I think it makes sense from a lore perspective. That would be interesting to see that evolution. I mean, right now, I guess what we have. I don't even consider the Zeus Mark II a Mark II because it's the only one we have. I'm talking about ships that players can own. So really, all we have right now is the Hornet.
They just called it a Mark II to be a homage to the original. Right. Yeah, you are absolutely correct.
Yeah. That being said, everyone, I am going to have to get back to work. Unfortunately, I have not found a way for people to just pay me tons and tons of money to just do these streams all day, talk ships. But I think, but we'll get together. I'm going to get a Starjump station going pretty soon with VM and MkII, and we'll continue this conversation because I think there's a lot of good to talk about here. Any final words from any of you guys before we got
to do a proper Aurora remake.
We do. We need to have
maybe we remember that little competition thing we were talking about. Maybe that's the ship we pick then.
Yeah,
it's small. It'd be good for two groups to go at.
It would be really cool. I think Trispone would have a lot of fun with that one too. I was supposed to do at Quantum Vegas 2955. I was supposed to do an Anvil concept kit bash live on stage. I'm not doing that now, by the way, because I didn't want to risk laptop.
You need to let me and VMXMO call in and help you out with that. That'd be great. I want to do that.
I'm not going to do it at the show, but I have decided I'm going to do a Shipyard stream one day, like a long one. I'm going to find a Saturday or something where I can stream for 5 hours straight, and I want to do a full-on Anvil kit bash. But real quick, everyone, I do have to wrap it up. We're going to raid our good buddy Sigelian today. Thank you, MkII. Thank you, VMXEO, for coming on and talking Mark II variants with me. Hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you, chat, for being so active. Also, thank you, C-Daddy CIG, and of course Richard Tyrer for showing up in chat. That was really cool that Richard showed up and C-Daddy showed up. I don't know, Rich, if you're still listening, but as I said multiple times earlier, that the Star System 1.0 panel was a really, for me at least, was a good affirmation that the direction of the game is heading in the right direction, and I'm all about the 1.0 vision. So whatever decisions need to be made from gameplay, ship standpoints to achieve that vision, I'm behind. Everyone, chat, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Do something kind for strangers. Do not forget to go to the Gleam link. I'm going to post that in chat one more time. Get in on that Perseus giveaway. Multiple free ways to enter, so get in on that giveaway. The link is down there in chat. I'm going to give that away at the end of July. That is for an RSI Perseus with 120-month insurance. That being said, everybody, have a great day. Execute VM. Thank you very much for coming on today. The rest of you, look for a stream tomorrow night where I'll be talking about 6 months review of the in-game content that we've seen so far. I do have some opinions on it. So, rating now, everybody. Have a good day. Talk to you later.
See you, citizens.